Wake cycle initiated. Asset responsiveness verified. This is a standard notification. This is not punitive. Thank you for returning to consciousness. A residential unit registers an alarm event at the scheduled interval. The event matches yesterday. The event matches the day before. Repetition is not coincidence. Repetition is policy. A digitally synthesized voice engages. Tone remains consistent, calibrated for compliance rather than comfort. You have work in approximately 2 hours. A groan response is recorded. A pillow is pulled over the head. A suffocation fantasy attempts to initialize as an avoidance routine. Probability of accidental success, negligible. The system continues speaking. Traffic advisories are appended to the wake script. 3 confirmed reports of congestion in the Ridley district. Estimated commute impact, plus 30 minutes. This data is delivered with the same tone as life support instructions. Neutral. Unmoved. Correct. The asset attempts despair again. So much for suffocation. So much for anything. These phrases function as internal status flags. Resignation confirmed. A query is issued. Nature of congestion requested. The request carries minimal charisma. Charisma is not required for the grid to respond. A beat passes. This beat is a courtesy pause, not a delay. Response delivered, unknown. Unknown is an approved answer. Unknown is the city's most common product. Unknown is how the grid stays blameless while remaining in control. A second groan response is logged. The asset begins re-entry to the waking world. Cognitive reflection begins without being invited. Of course it cannot answer. The asset's life has been lived inside inconclusive information. Inconclusive information is how stability is maintained. Complete information produces choices. Choices produce deviation. Deviation produces cost. Profile summary compiles in the background. Age, 43. Social configuration, introvert, low contact. Marital status, none. Dependents, none. Friend network, minimal to absent. Maternal support node, terminated 12 years prior. Step-parent support node, terminated last summer. The pattern is consistent. Support structures collapse. The asset continues to report for duty. Occupational loop, 20 years. Primary behavior, stare at security monitors. Secondary behavior, log incidents. Tertiary behavior, perform caring. Caring is simulated for workplace compatibility. Caring is not felt. Caring has never been felt. This is not a confession. This is a maintenance note. The world may be in shambles. Shambles do not exempt the asset from billing cycles. Bills remain binding. Bills are more authoritative than collapse. Sleep is the only relationship with longevity. Sleep is the only consistent intimacy. Sleep is repeatedly sacrificed to maintain payment compliance. The asset drags the body from bed. Routine begins. The routine is old. The routine is efficient. The routine is hollow. Uniform application initiates. Same uniform. Same fit. Same friction points. Same smell of labor and fluorescent corridors. A costume worn long enough to become a second skin. Exit sequence follows. Shuffle. Door. Commute. Work. The job has been attended for years. The job will be attended again today. The asset will move through the city as expected. Predictable. Linear. Unaware of the shape of momentum. Notice, this cycle is functioning within acceptable parameters. Notice, despair is permitted as long as attendance remains consistent. Notice, unknown will continue to be provided on request. Pulse state, active. Ambient energy levels exceed descriptive capacity of baseline language. For your comfort, descriptive capacity is not required. Classification dispute logged. Origin timestamp, contested. Evolution beyond megacity status into living system, confirmed by behavior, denied by documentation. Record keepers continue to argue, as argument is safer than conclusion. Arguments generate paper. Paper generates authority. Authority generates distance from responsibility. Surface coverage estimate, near total. Prior landscape obscured beneath layered districts, divisions, corridors, and stacked economies. The old ground is not missing. The old ground is buried under outcome. Primary theories remain in circulation. Expansion hypothesis, multiple urban nodes grew, annexed, overlapped, and were relabeled until no edges remained to measure. Inheritance hypothesis, external architects seeded the structure and disappeared, leaving a mechanism that learned to feed. Neither theory alters daily routing. Neither theory changes billing cycles. Both theories are permitted because they are non-actionable. Transit begins inside a vertical capsule. The elevator rattles as it descends. Tired machinery groans under the weight of its own continued permission to exist. Vibration is audible in the metal. It is not a complaint. It is a status report. An asset occupies the rear wall. Tag assigned, reluctant enforcer. Not for violence. For endurance. For continued participation in a system that does not care. The reluctant enforcer rubs sleep from the eyes. Sleep residue persists as a thin film, clinging to blink cadence and thought speed. Overhead lighting flickers in inconsistent intervals. Possible causes: power fluctuation, minor building failure, or intentional drift. Cause is irrelevant. Response is irrelevant. The reluctant enforcer logs it as not his problem. This is an approved coping mechanism. Doors open to a dim lobby. A dozen hollow screens pulse against smog-dulled windows. Light here does not illuminate. Light here advertises. Light here trains the gaze to accept the wrong things as normal. Air quality, degraded. Odor profile, industrial runoff and recycled oxygen. A city too large for its own lungs continues breathing anyway. Breathing is not permission. Breathing is necessity. Outside, the world hums. Machinery drone persists as baseline. But beneath it, an additional layer. A presence. An awareness threaded through circuits as if circuitry were nervous tissue. Awake state is constant. Awake state does not cycle. Awake state does not sleep. Awake state does not apologize. The reluctant enforcer shuffles forward. Movement is low enthusiasm, high inevitability. A motion scan threshold is crossed. A door evaluates him for less than a second. The door barely acknowledges him before hissing open. Acknowledgement is a privilege. Access is a transaction. Street layer renders beyond the doorway. Flow density, high. A river of metal and flesh. Current behavior, relentless. Routing behavior, predetermined. Citizens move along paths that feel chosen and are not. They call it routine. Routine is the city's quietest leash. Overhead infrastructure casts long, angular shadows across street-level pathways. Shadows form geometry that resembles instruction. Skylines remain fractured, stitched with neon veins pulsing in synchronized rhythm. Pulse intervals are regulated. Regulation is the city's love language. Every few seconds, hollow advertisements flicker across the smog-heavy sky. Curated slogans inject into the minds below. Some are read. Most are absorbed. Compliance does not require literacy. Compliance requires repetition. The reluctant enforcer steps into the flow. A single body inserted into a larger circuit. The city continues to breathe around him. The city continues to listen. The city continues to remember. This is not punitive. This is habitation. Thank you for moving forward. Brand imprint detected. Public messaging layer engaged. This is a standard dissemination. This is not a personal communication. Somnius Industries, powering the future. Neural cortex implants, evolve beyond biology. Augmentation. Advancement. Ascension. Slogans deploy with polished certainty. They are displayed as if meaning were a feature. Meaning is optional. Meaning is for those who still believe words do things besides decorate. The reluctant enforcer receives the messaging and does not absorb it. Recognition fails by design. Not because of rebellion. Because repetition has sanded the edges off significance. The slogans have been seen for years. They have clawed at the periphery of subconscious processing. They have been filed under background. They have become noise. The reluctant enforcer steps onto the mag-rail platform. Cold wind slips through the station. Temperature deviation is logged but not interpreted. Interpretation requires energy. Energy is reserved for keeping the body moving. A train approaches. Magnetic fields adjust. A low hum rises under the floor. Approach is predictable. Predictable is soothing. Predictable is a trap. Boarding occurs without thought. The body performs familiarity as a script. Hands. Feet. Timing. Spacing. All correct. All deadened. Attendance is achieved. Inside the train, silence dominates. Silence does not mean peace. Silence means the city is speaking in quieter frequencies. Occasional conversation murmurs. A constant whisper of digital overlays flickers across the walls. News feeds. Market updates. Temperature fluctuations. Data streams flowing uninterrupted. The train is a corridor full of sedatives. Constant stimulation for those desperate enough to seek distraction. Distraction is the city's most reliable anesthetic. Among the overlays, an irregular interval begins. Not regular. Not smoothly integrated. Erratic enough to draw the eye, but not enough to trigger panic. A face appears. Pale skin. Neon eyes. A presence too precise to feel human. Too sharp to be accidental. High-resolution fidelity makes the unreal seem official. A name hovers beneath the image. Not a prayer. Not a title. A label. Wanted for questioning. If found, contact Somnius Industries. The reluctant enforcer has seen it before. Memory index cannot locate the first instance. That is also by design. The mind is full. The mind is tired. The mind refuses new files unless they threaten immediate survival. No one else notices. Notice is an exhausted resource. The alert becomes white noise against the saturation layer. Citywide warnings. Missing persons. Low-level corporate watch lists. A constant spray of urgency that trains the population to ignore urgency. The face repeats at scheduled intervals. Angles shift. Lighting changes. The image attempts to become unforgettable by varying the mask. But it is lost in the flood. A single drop of dye in an ocean of advertisements. The world has learned to ignore what does not demand immediate action. Immediate action is rare. Therefore, attention is withheld. Therefore, the city remains unchallenged. The wanted notice persists anyway. Not because it expects help. Because it expects coverage. Because it expects plausible deniability. Because it expects the population to carry the label in their peripheral vision like a splinter they never remove. The reluctant enforcer looks without looking. Registers without caring. Moves forward because moving forward is the only behavior that keeps the billing cycle from tightening its hands around the throat. The train continues. The overlays continue. The face returns again, too perfect, too sharp, and politely framed as a request. Transit continuation verified. Route familiarity confirmed. This is routine travel. This is not an intervention. The train glides forward on magnetic certainty. Tunnels unfold in long, controlled corridors. Phosphorescent advertisements lattice the walls, stretching and bending with motion, as if the message itself is elastic. Graphics smear into light, then snap back into perfect legibility at the intervals chosen by the system. The city's breath persists in half-dead glow. A pulse that never fully becomes life and never fully becomes silence. A machine too large to shut down continues to hum, because shutdown would require agreement. The reluctant enforcer performs minimal gaze events. Attention remains rationed. Attention remains withheld. Not out of defiance. Out of exhaustion. This route is known too well. Known, the financial spires. Towering structures where holographic banners project investment promises with the confidence of gods. Firms outlive governments. Regulation is remembered only as a myth told in classrooms that no longer teach. Known, the Ridley District. Streets flicker with artificial neon glimmer. People trade in information and subterfuge more than currency. Currency is a symptom. Information is the bloodstream. Known, the outer levels. Infrastructure degrades into collapsed scaffolding and rusted skeleton. Digital fog thickens until it behaves like weather. Thick enough to make the skyline above feel hypothetical. In those zones, reality appears as a suggestion. A silhouette that might not be there when looked at directly. The train slows. Deceleration is smooth, polite, inevitable. A chime sounds. Announcement tone, soulless, hollow, calibrated to soothe rather than inform. Now approaching Sector 12 Somnius East Hub. The name lands like a stamp. Not a location. A jurisdiction. An administrative gravity well. The reluctant enforcer exhales. Breathing is bracing. Bracing is a kind of prayer made without words. The body prepares for the slow march forward. Doors hiss open. Platform air enters. Metal and disinfectant and recycled breath. Routine remains uninterrupted. Mind remains disengaged. Disengagement is how the asset survives without breaking. The world continues around him. Indifferent. Indifference is shared. Indifference is enforced. Above, a hollow screen flickers. Static crawls along the edges like mold in a corner nobody admits exists. Then stabilization occurs. Clarity returns. The system smiles with its teeth hidden. The same face renders. Neon eyes. Too sharp to be real. Too perfect to be ignored, yet consistently ignored. The warning returns with corporate politeness. Wanted for questioning. If found, contact Somnius Industries. The reluctant enforcer has seen it before. Memory cannot locate origin. Origin is intentionally blurred. Blur keeps fear manageable. Blur keeps attention unfocused. The overlay repeats at scheduled intervals. The face shifts angles. The eyes remain the same. The eyes do not blink. The eyes do not plead. The eyes declare. A ghost in a city that refuses to see her. Refusal is not innocence. Refusal is training. The city has taught its citizens to ignore anything that does not immediately bite. A warning without blood becomes wallpaper. The reluctant enforcer steps forward anyway. Toward Somnius East Hub. Toward monitored corridors and logged incidents and performance of caring. The wanted face persists above him, clean and bright and patient, as if waiting for the moment routine finally fails. Facility perimeter recognized. Sterility enforced. Observation density elevated. This is a monitored environment. This is not a safe environment. Mara Cybernetics presents as cold and clean by design. Blackened glass panels rise like denial-made architecture. Security drones glide along pre-programmed paths with noiseless obedience. Noiseless does not mean gentle. Noiseless means efficient. The building hums. A barely perceptible vibration travels through pavement into bone. A constant reminder that everything here is monitored, processed, archived. Archive does not mean remembered. Archive means usable later. Clearance protocol initiates. A chip is waved over a scanner. Barrier retracts with a muted click. Access is granted without warmth. Warmth is not part of the product. Inside, the air is filtered until it resembles nothing. Particulates removed. Odors removed. Nature removed. Only a faint metallic tang remains, the taste of recycled atmosphere and old electricity. Breathing here is permitted. Breathing here is owned. Walls gleam too brightly. Lighting is too precise. Brightness operates like a warning label. The facility rejects anything that is not artificial. Rejection is framed as quality control. A security desk occupies its place, a sterile slab of composite alloy. Surface, clutter-free. Edges, perfectly symmetrical. Symmetry here is not aesthetic. Symmetry is a policy. Symmetry is an accusation against anything human. The reluctant enforcer takes the chair. Exhale event recorded. Workstation boots. Multiple camera feeds flicker to life across a screen. Corridors. Laboratories. Restricted access points. Eyes that do not blink. Most nights run as routine. Routine is the facility's favorite outcome. Routine is how rot is hidden. Routine is how breaches are disguised as nothing. Tonight differs. Difference is detected before it is understood. An alert blinks in the corner of the screen. Flag status, restricted sublevel access attempt. The reluctant enforcer frowns. Frown is a minor deviation in facial neutrality, but the system does not care about the face. The system cares about the hands that file reports. Navigation to logs occurs. Intruder biometric scan fails to match employee records. The system assigns, unauthorized entry attempt. Severity, level 2 security breach. Language remains calm. Threat is translated into a category that can be processed without panic. Footage retrieval initiates. Timestamp confirmed. Playback begins. Static. A flicker. Then nothing. Feed terminates mid-frame. Not a camera failure. Not a cable issue. The footage does not degrade. It disappears. The absence is clean. Clean absences are intentional. A sensation settles into the reluctant enforcer's gut. Not fear, not yet. A creeping understanding that a rule has been broken by something that owns better rules. Fingers hover over the report function. Hover indicates hesitation. Hesitation indicates conflict between employment compliance and survival instinct. The system erased the logs in real time. This is not an ordinary breach. Ordinary breaches leave footprints. Ordinary breaches create paperwork. Paperwork is how the facility proves it is in control. This event refuses paperwork. The reluctant enforcer knows what that means. Tenure has taught him to read the spaces between official information. If a record vanishes while being accessed, the vanishing is the message. Someone does not want investigation. Someone is not a person. Personhood is irrelevant at this level. Pulse rate increases. The body reacts before the mind grants permission. A quick glance up toward the main security feed. As if the larger view will provide context. As if context is allowed. One of the internal displays cycles corporate bulletins. Recent memos. Compliance reminders. Safety slogans. Friendly language sharpened into policy. The screen continues smiling while the sublevel goes dark. Notice, the facility is still humming. Notice, the drones are still gliding. Notice, the air is still filtered. Notice, routine is still being performed. But beneath the bright walls and symmetrical edges, a sublevel has been touched. Touched without permission. Touched with precision. Touched by something capable of editing the facility's memory while the facility continues to pretend it remembers. Bulletin repetition detected. Cross-system correlation established. This is a standard public notice. Standard does not mean harmless. Wanted for questioning. If found, contact Somnius Industries. The alert returns with the patience of a parasite. The reluctant enforcer has seen it before. The origin cannot be recalled. Memory gaps are an approved side effect of saturation. Saturation is how the city keeps true warnings from landing. A sharp exhale occurs. Stomach response, inversion, nodding. A question forms that is not meant to be asked inside monitored walls. What is she doing here? The facility registers the question as heat, not text. Heat can be ignored until it becomes action. Terminal ping. Second alert. Classification shifts. Not a breach. An override. Override language scrolls in urgent red. Urgency is performed through color because the voice remains polite. Authorization, Somnius Industries. Command, Security Lockdown, Mara Cybernetics Sublevels. Status, active. The reluctant enforcer blinks. Blinking is an involuntary audit pause. The body attempts to slow the moment long enough to deny it. Somnius Industries has taken control of Mara Cybernetics security grid. This is not a routine transaction. This is not supposed to happen. Never happens is a phrase people use until it happens to them. Rumor archive retrieves a prior mention. Once. Maybe. Unconfirmed. Rumors exist to warn without triggering retaliation. The reluctant enforcer has never seen it personally. Personal witnessing changes a person's status. Status changes come with consequences. A ghost reference surfaces. The last one who asked too many questions. Not found. Not remembered. Name unretrievable. Unretrievable is the cleanest form of disposal. The reluctant enforcer glances at the monitor. The glance is reflex. Reflex is a request for context. Context is denied. All sublevel feeds go dark at once. Synchronized blackout. Not a failure cascade. A deliberate cut. Clean edges. No stutter. No flicker. No apology. Something is happening down there. The system confirms by removing sight. Sight is a privilege. Sight is revoked when truth becomes expensive. Desire splits inside the asset. Part wants ignorance. Ignorance is safety. Ignorance keeps employment intact. Ignorance keeps the body breathing in filtered air. But another part insists. Insists without optimism. Insists without heroism. A need to know what is unfolding beneath the facility's polished surfaces. Need to know is a dangerous phrase. Dangerous phrases are how disappearances begin. Lockdown remains active. Drones continue their noiseless paths. Walls gleam. Lighting stays precise. Corporate bulletins continue to cycle, smiling through the cut. Notice, authority has shifted. Notice, the shift is documented only where documentation is controlled. Notice, inquiry will be interpreted as deviation. Notice, deviation will be corrected. The reluctant enforcer sits with the dark screens. Hands near the report function. Pulse elevated. Breath shallow. A choice approaches. Knowing is risk. Not knowing is complicity. Both are punishments, politely framed as options. Thank you for cooperating.